I've read everything of yours, but the misery novels, I know them all by heart. All 8 of them. I love them so.
You're very kind.
And you're very brilliant. Like a baby. All done.
Thank you. When do you think the phone lines will be up? I have to call my daughter, and I'd like to call my agent in New York and let her know I'm still breathing.
Shouldn't be too much longer now. Once the roads are open, the phone lines will be up in no time. If you give me their numbers, I'll keep trying them for you.
Thank you.
Could I ask you a favor? I noticed in your case there's a new Paul Sheldon book, and I wondered if maybe...
You want to read it?
Well, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, I do have a very hard and fast rule as to who reads my stuff at this early stage. Only my editor, my agent, and anybody that saves me from freezing to death in a car wreck.
You'll never realize what a rare treat you've given me. Boy, it's like clockwork the way your pain comes. I'll get you your novel, Paul. Forgive me for prattling away and making you feel all oogie.
This is the Rope Podcast. I'm Ben Sebastian here with my co-host S.A. Baz Collins, and we're really glad you're here with us. Our guest today is David Colby. David was born and grew up in a household and family so nice and wonderful that his early life was completely and utterly bereft of interesting drama beyond a single incident in high school when he slipped on some grass and damaged a very valuable sousaphone while trying to please his marching band instructor. To correct this, he took up writing and kept writing until he got halfway decent at it. Currently laboring on works spanning science fiction, fantasy, and all the bizarre fusions in between, David is publishing novels and short stories through Thinking Ink Press and Fiction Silicon Valley. David, welcome to the show.
Hello. Yay, round of applause.
Woohoo! So, obviously, the marching band story is awesome, but how did you, really pursue the writing career? What was the spark? Where did it come from?
Okay, to begin...
Oh, he needs a drink now.
Okay, so this story requires a bit of setup. So, in the 1990s, a video game came out called Total Annihilation. It was a really fun game. I loved it a lot as a kid. And when I got older, the game also got older. Unfortunately, unlike human beings, when games get older, they don't actually get better. They just stay the same.
Right.
And so I started searching for ways to make the game more modern. And one of those ways was I found a forum run by a bunch of Swedish people, I kid you not, who were creating a modern update of Total Annihilation called Total Annihilation: Spring. I don't know why it's called Spring. It's not a very summery game or anything like that. It was just Total Annihilation, but more advanced.
Okay.
So I joined this forum, eagerly anticipating the game coming out. And there was an off-topic section on the forum. And I think for basically no reason whatsoever, I started writing stories and posting them in the off-topic section.
Oh, that's cool.
I've written stories before in the past, but I never finished them because I would always get bored and wandered off and do something else. Because at the time, my dream was still to become an astronaut and not a writer. But at the same time, I was realizing how not fit I was for being an astronaut. I started getting positive comments on my story posts on this website. And so they turned from being joke stories that I was just writing for fun into things that I hoped people would actually enjoy, and I kept getting more and more positive comments. And it turns out positive feedback is how you stick to writing.
Nice.
So my mom noticed that I was really getting into this writing thing, so I was mentioning it to her. And so she found a group of real world writers in the real world who met every week, every Tuesday, at the Barnes and Noble nearby. And we would just write and read what we wrote and write some more. And so I went there, and I've been going to that writer meeting for the past 12 years now.
Wow.
So really,
That's commitment all by itself.
What?
Yeah.
That's commitment all by itself.
Yeah. So really, yeah, that's how I got into writing. Is I wrote for a bunch of fellow video game nerds, and they liked it, and so I just kept writing. And it's really boring, but that's how it works.
Well, that's not boring. That's awesome.
All right.
Yeah, you're talking to a gamer, so you know.
Yeah.
He knows your lingo.
Oh, and TA Spring did eventually come out, but by then I'd found better video games than Total Annihilation, so I don't really play it anymore. So, you know, irony.
Gotcha. And so moving on to your series then, Lunar Cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about it.
Well, I started writing this in college because at the time I had a girlfriend that did not live nearby me. And she still doesn't live nearby me because the economy and Corona and family situations all make it really complicated. You know
Right.
how it is.
Mm-hmm.
And inspired by this, I was like, what if I wrote a story that took all of my feelings about being in a long distance relationship and then just made it even more ludicrously exaggerated by having one character be in space and one character be on the planet Earth. And so then from there, I started thinking out, you know, okay, so why would a teenager be in space? Because only a teenager can be appropriately angsty for the angst that I'm feeling. You know, why would they be in space? What would they be doing in space? How could there be laser guns? Because you've got to have laser guns. And I kind of built out from there, you know, creating the universe and the plot. And then I got to work in all of my anti-war, war on terror, the Iraq war, the Afghanistan war, all that stuff got put in there too. And that's how we get the Lunar Cycle.
Nice. So tell me about the characters.
So the main character from the Lunar Cycle is Drusilla Zhao. She's a teenager who was born in outer space, specifically in low Earth orbit. Well, technically it's high Earth orbit, but who's counting? She was born in space because her parents are workers who were constructing a space elevator, which is a sci-fi concept where you build a space station in orbit and you lower a tether from it to the planet, tie the tether there, and technically you also need a counterweight that's equally distanced above the station, you know, keep it from falling out of orbit. And the thing about this is now, rather than needing really expensive rockets or other complicated ways to get into space, you can just ride up and down the tether, which is, you know, it's as easy as running an elevator. And so the reason why this is being built is because in this future, humanity has managed to wean itself off of fossil fuels before completely destroying the environment by mining and processing lunar regolith, that's the dirt on the moon, to create helium-3, which is a useful form of helium that can be used to run fusion reactors. These are all fairly plausible technologies. So, but the problem is that whilst it is possible to get the lunar helium from the moon, it is expensive because you have to fly up and down from orbit. And if you've ever read any physics textbooks about building rockets, you know that the most expensive part is getting from the ground to orbit. As the famous author Heinlein said, once you're in orbit, you're halfway to anywhere. So the government was building this space elevator to easily move material and people from Earth to space. But unfortunately, most of the people living on the moon were political prisoners sent there to mine lunar regolith because it was dangerous and it was unpleasant and no one else wanted to do it. And also because the government is just a tiny bit evil. So these political prisoners wanted to be independent from Earth and they wanted their own government, and they realized correctly, that if this space elevator is completed, the government's going to be able to just flood space with their own citizens and basically pave over their entire culture and their entire nascent society. So they flew a space shuttle into it at, high speeds and knocked the space elevator out of orbit, which, as you can guess, had kind of some deleterious side effects. Killed a bunch of people on the ground, and it caused a cascading event of space collisions. Because when you break something in space, it makes it much more likely that more things will break. Because, you hit a space station, a bunch of chunks come off of it, those chunks hit other space stations, and then those space stations break, and then those chunks go out, and they hit more things, and it escalates into an exponential series of debris, hence the title Debris Dreams. So these debris, this debris hangs in orbit and basically creates a no-go zone, because if you fly through it, they're just going to zip through your ship and kill you. So the main character is now stuck in space, and a war is starting because no government is going to let terrorists blow up their stuff and then secede from the Union without doing something about it. And so she gets drafted into the space military and has to, survive. So, because unlike Star Wars, where everyone's got, hero shields and airplane and spaceships move like airplanes, warfare in space is actually really dangerous and scary when you're more realistic about it. So.
Right. Well, all right. 2 questions, then. They're completely opposite directions. One, it sounds like you have a lot of study and knowledge about this topic.
Yeah.
Can I pick your brain as to, was that your focus in college?
Sure. No, it absolutely was not. My focus in college was in English.
Okay.
I learned all of this science stuff from a combination of my parents, who are both literally rocket scientists.
So
They both actually have PhDs, so you can call them doctor if you want to.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and also I just did a lot of research myself because I find this stuff really, really fascinating. I read a lot on the website Atomic Rocket, which is a great source for writers out there. If you're ever writing science fiction, even if you're not planning to do like hard sci-fi, it is worth reading Atomic Rocket to at least know how the real world works so that you can then break it in interesting ways. It'll inspire you, that sort of thing.
Okay. And
what's the other question?
Well, the second line is her relationship.
Yes, her relationship, right. So her relationship is with a girl on the ground named Sarah. I decided to make the main character gay for the mercurial reason of gay people exist and deserve to have stories about them. I think that was basically the only reason why I did so. And the other reason, of course, is, my relationship isn't exactly queer or isn't exactly gay because I'm dating a girl, but she's trans. So it is definitely not cis-normative. It's
right.
It's not gay, but it sure isn't straight.
Right.
So I wanted to explore a universe where while there are still differences between humans, there's war, there's oppression, there's all the bad stuff that leads to warfare and violence and political terror. We've at least moved past the really dumb stuff, like who you love, what gender you present as or choose to be as, and so on. So, I wanted at least a tiny bit of optimism in my cynical military sci-fi. So I set out to make a very, very queer cast. And also a explicitly polyamorous one. A big cultural difference between people who live in orbit and people who live on the Earth is, on the Earth, they're slightly more old-fashioned when it comes to monogamy, but in space, polyamory is just kind of considered normal. I think it's mostly because the early settlers in space lived in very cramped tin can habitats. There was basically no privacy. So no one cared what you were doing because if you tried to care, you'd go crazy. and then that evolved into they were just much more open with that kind of thing. So,
Well,
Very
bravo
cool.
for writing something so positive in that regard, because a lot
Yeah.
of what queer people meet is, pushback from, from the SF community of,
oh yeah,
why are you cramming this down our throats? Motherfucker, we've been here this whole time. I
yeah.
mean,
A friend of mine on Twitter is a trans writer who constantly bemoans, man, I really hate how one of my favorite genres, military sci-fi, hates my existence. And it's like, yeah, it sucks.
yeah, no. I mean, even Chuck Wendig ran through this when he included queer characters in one of the Star Wars books. He got
Like-
slammed all over the place for it. He's like, dudes, really? I mean, so, good on you for doing it, and I like the fact that you're doing the hard science, because I'm married to a quantum mechanics physicist who worked for NASA and JPL. So trust me, I get using that and breaking it where you want to for whatever reasons you need to in the story. So that's great. I love that. Totally love that.
Oh, thank you.
I just love your vision of the future.
Right.
I mean, I don't. It's terrible.
Well,
But
not from a relationship standpoint.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah.
And there were people working to fix it.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, your characters had 3 books now? You got 3 in the series?
Yes, it's a 3-book series. It's Debris Dreams, Shattered Skies, Luna's Lament. And it does end happily, because I do like having happy endings, but there's a lot of drama and angst from the beginning to the end.
Right.
Well, that's what makes a happy ending worthwhile.
So
Yeah.
is it like open-ended after the 3rd book? I mean, could you approach this world again, or did you pretty much wrap it up?
I wrapped up the main character's story. Like, she ends up in a place where I'm happy leaving her and never bothering her again. Like, she's been through enough. We can let through some lay down. But
Let them go up the tether together in life. Yeah, got it.
Yeah. There is a implication at the ending that there may be more in the story, because back in college, when I first sold this book, because this book actually's got kind of a exciting publication history. First, it got published at a publisher called Candlemark and Gleam, and then that publisher was bought out and switched away from publishing YA to publishing literally anything else. So I got the rights to the book back, and then I had already written Shattered Skies and Luna's Lament, and eventually my writing group that I mentioned before founded their own publishing company. And then, my friend Anthony was like, hey, we could publish Debris Dreams. And that's how the new edition comes out. And then we get Shattered Skies out, and then we get Luna's Lament out. And that's how that all worked. But back in college, when I was hoping that Debris Dreams would take off more, I had planned out more trilogies in the series, each one taking place a little bit further into the future, and each one kind of positing a slightly more space opera, less hard sci-fi setting as technology advances, and physical laws that we find immutable now become mutable, just for fun stuff like that. I've almost completely forgotten nearly every single planned story that I had then, which means I can make up new ones now if that ever happens.
That's a good way to look at it. That's a really good way, yeah.
So
like
the
it.
existing series is...
Go ahead. No, I just
series
wanted to say that I like an author that knows how to screw with the muses.
Yeah. So the existing series is 2067-ish?
2068.
Okay.
It starts in 2067, and then it goes into 2068.
Got it.
It is not a very long war, mostly because that's one of the nice things about fighting wars in space. The population density is real low, so you can't have the kind of long slugging matches.
Well, and the cost would be astronomical. Pardon the pun.
That too.
So, in terms of thinking of the next series, then how far of a jump would you make?
Probably it'd probably be about her kids, or in that era.
So a generation-ish.
Yeah, and I was thinking it would probably be about the invention of the first faster-than-light spaceship, because I and my dad like talking about semi-plausible means of faster than light travel. One of his that I really like is accelerating at sufficient speeds towards a rapidly rotating hyperdimensional object. I don't know what that means, but he assures me that it might work. But he says that the problem with faster than light travel is you're breaking causality, because the way that it works is light travels at a certain speed, and that light contains information. So the light from Earth is going to Alpha Centauri at a rate where it's going to get there in about 4 years. But if you just jump straight to Alpha Centauri, it means that you're getting there before the information of you leaving arrives in Alpha Centauri, which technically means you're traveling through time, which is a big no-no. So his idea was, what if you could travel faster than the speed of light by leaping beyond your light cone. Light cone is the area of space that your light will eventually reach. Because eventually light just doesn't travel fast enough to get everywhere. So you could jump beyond that point, which would be like beyond the observable universe. We don't actually know how big the universe is. We just know how far we can see.
Right.
It may go on literally infinitely in every direction for all we know. I mean, probably not. I don't know. We're talking about a realm of astrophysics.
Yeah, you're into
very
science. Yeah.
very what should we call it?
Theoretical.
Speculative. That was it.
All right.
Also, I'm probably using like terminology and concepts that are like 10 years out of date by this point. So, you know.
Fair enough. So bringing it back to the tangible, what are you currently working on?
What I'm currently working on. Okay, so I am currently on a break from writing young adult because I actually have two careers. I work on both young adult and adult novels. And I'm currently working on editing a novel for adults called Pax Multi, which means multiple piece in really terrible Latin. And this is a very strange book because I wrote it for adults, and it's got explicit erotic content. It's got lots of swearing, lots of violence, all that fun stuff. But I'm thinking about it, and ironically, I think I could actually edit it down to YA really easily if I wanted to, which is hilarious because I actually have a YA book that I took and edited to make it for adults because it actually worked really well with the adult market. So it's a kind of interesting, ironic inversion. But Pax Multi is also quasi hard sci-fi. It takes place in the 24th century, where humanity has basically united into a very disparate collection of different human polities that are all based off of different ideologies. Okay. There's anarchists, there's people who explore new frontiers of consciousness. There are uplifted animals like dolphins and monkeys and whales that have been modified to be sentient. Wow. There are literal fascists who nobody likes. And there's finally the Neapolitan Star Kingdom, which is basically a bunch of people who are trying to recreate the splendor of ancient nobility because they feel that it's important for humanity to have that character in them. And this united human species has been fighting for the past 200 years a race of horrible space bugs that have been attacking us, for the past, few centuries. But we've managed to fight them to a standstill, which is when it's very surprising to the human fleet when they get a message from the bugs that's signaled to them. And it's basically, I surrender, I give up. So everyone's surprised. No one really expected the bugs to ever give up because, we don't really know much about them. So they start talking, and it turns out that the bugs are a hive mind. So they're all one intelligence. And as a pseudo-publicity stunt, the king of the Neapolitan Star Empire, King Louis Benoit XI, has his son marry the bugs as a royal wedding to cement the peace. Because you know how in human history, you would marry couples together to prevent wars.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Sure.
So it's like that, but it's his son marrying an entire hive mind of horrible bugs. But the entire story is about these two characters, the hive mind and the prince, actually falling in love, finding a connection. The hive mind learns about humanity, and I've gotten a lot of comments from people who've read it about, like, how dare you make these bugs so adorable.
We can't have adorable bugs.
Well,
No.
there's the
We are a raid society.
the adorable / saddest part. The part that I was really happy writing is when the Prince Lou, he's Prince Louis the 12th, so because it's the name, and so Lou and the bugs are talking, and he communicates to the bugs that each human being is an individual human and not part of a hive. They're not like disposable drones, and the bug's response is to like scream and run away in horror because she realized that she just killed millions of people, that kind of thing. So.
Nice.
Excellent.
So I'm working on that. I don't know if I'm going to keep it for adults or if I'm going to edit it to YA or not. That's up in the air.
Fair enough.
Any more questions?
No. Actually, I was wondering if you were ready for our RFQs.
Yes.
Okay, so we're taking your pages and we're actually turning them into what you would think would happen if we made them into movies and stuff. So first we're going to look under the hood and see what you think about a couple of topics. So
Sure.
What has been your recent favorite film or series, and why did it appeal?
All right. The series that has completely knocked it out of the park. Okay. Wait. How recent is recent? Does it need to be something?
Whatever you want to make it.
Yep.
Okay. So the series that most recently is my absolute favorite is She-Ra and the Princesses of Power. It came out
Nice.
in 2018. It is fantastic. It's probably got one of the most emotionally intense love stories I've ever seen in my life. I was in tears for like the entire show.
Aw.
If you haven't seen it, or if you know nothing about She-Ra, which is possible, it's a fantasy universe. There's a world called Etheria, which is currently being invaded by an evil army called the Evil Horde. Very creative. All these names were made up in the 80s and they haven't changed, which is why it's great. It's why you have characters like Catra, who is literally a cat person named Catra. It's great.
Right.
So
Quite
the
literal.
so the main character, Adora, is a lieutenant in the Evil Horde, and she is unaware that it's evil. Like she thinks that they're the good guys, and she's working for the good guys. And her best friend is Catra. I say best friend, they're in love. It's incredibly obvious right from the beginning that Catra loves Adora, and Adora is completely oblivious to it. It's great. So Adora finds out that the Evil Horde is evil when she discovers an ancient magical sword that allows her to transform into a 9-foot-tall superwoman named She-Ra, hence the name of the show.
Right.
So she switches sides. She defects from the Horde and joins the good guys, the Princess Alliance. And Catra takes this really, really, really badly because Catra is a bundle of incredibly interesting psychological issues. Abandonment, self-loathing, all that fun stuff. So the entire series is this extended relationship drama between Adora, Catra, and the surrounding cast of characters, because the show is great. It cuts between the good guys and the bad guys at nearly equal amounts and makes both of them incredibly likable. All of them are really endearing characters. Even the head of the Evil Horde is sympathetic and understandable, and it's just fantastic. It is a show about empathy, about learning, about forgiveness and redemption, and all these wonderful things that we really, really need nowadays in the real world.
Right. No, exactly.
And it's very gay.
Excellent.
That's the most important part.
All right.
there are almost no straight characters in it. It's fantastic. So,
All right.
Nice.
Well, is there a series or film that surprised you with queer representation?
surprised me. I'm gonna say The Owl House, which is also a cartoon. I know I'm weird. I like cartoons. The Owl House is
Nothing
a
wrong
cartoon
with that.
show that's on the Disney Channel, not on Disney Plus though. I own Disney Plus, and it's not on Disney Plus. It's on the Disney Channel, so I had to buy it from Amazon, which is just. Ugh. Anyways,
What?
The Owl House, it's got like probably one of the few examples of bisexual representation in it. The main
wow.
character is really
Nice.
obviously into both women and men. I like that. And it's nice to see a bi character in a show for kids because you're bi when you're bi, like it,
Right.
there's no age limit on that. So
Right.
and it's also surprising because it's by Disney, and you know how Disney prefers queer characters
Right.
blurred out in the backgrounds. They can be
Right,
cut
right.
out.
A quick kiss that no one sees.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So, that's nice. I don't know if they'll go the whole hog because, like, to go back to She-Ra, in the first season, apparently, according to interviews I've read, the creator of the show had to say, "Oh no, they're best friends. They're not gay." And then only once the show had gotten popular and there was this huge, Catra Adora shipping community that she could point to and see. People want it. Then they let her do it. So there's no guarantee that the Owl House is going to go fully into a kind of queer romance, but I hope it does. That'd be nice.
Excellent. All right. Well, if your latest work were made into a film or series, who's in the dream cast for the main characters?
I have no idea who would play Drusilla Zhao because I am terrible with actors' names and faces. So instead, I'm just going to throw a generalized comment that someone in the cast, I don't know who, but someone has to be played by Kelly Marie Tran because she's delightful and I think she deserves a role.
Excellent.
Cool.
Okay. All right. That works.
I'm sorry, that's the best I can do.
No. That's fine.
You don't have to apologize.
Yeah. If you could co-write a work with another author, alive or not, who would that be and why?
Okay, I've got two answers. The first is I would like to co-author with Harry Turtledove, the master of alternate history. If you've ever been to a bookstore, you may have noticed that Harry Turtledove has like a shelf to himself.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, usually.
He's written like 10 million, billion, trillion books. And I would love to just pitch out there alt history ideas at him, and then we'd work together to make them into reality. I'd probably try and do the War to End All Worlds, which would be what if World War I happened and then Martians invaded. I think that'd be fun. Martians from H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds.
Oh, okay. Not
Nice-
doing John
nice
Carter
fusion.
kind of thing.
Yeah, I came up with the title first.
All
So
right.
the second
Excellent.
answer is cheating. I would like to work with an author named Erica Chappell. She's a role-playing game developer and also my friend on Discord. So, like, I probably actually could just by saying, "Hey, Erica, do you want to write a book together?"
Nice.
Shout out.
She created a role-playing game, and the setting is fantastic. And also, we're both giant nerds, so that'd be fun.
That'll work. Okay.
Perfect.
Well, is there a genre you haven't written in but would like to try?
I would really like to write a gothic romance, but I'm scared because it's really far outside of my wheelhouse. But I really want to get that angsty, longing, desperation again, because I haven't written that for a while.
Really slow burn kind of. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
there'd probably be a ghost, or at least an implied ghost.
Okay. Excellent. What topics do you still want to cover with your works?
I mean, I mostly write. I guess what you could say is I try to write empowering wish fulfillment fantasies. Like, there are a lot of people out there who don't exactly have it easy. Queer people, trans people, neurodivergent people. And I like writing stories where they not only can see themselves in those books, but they also have cool superpowers, because sometimes it's fun to have cool superpowers. And, cis, straight, neurotypical people have had those stories for literally thousands of years, and it's our turn now. So.
Okay, excellent. Well, name a big challenge you see facing the LGBTQ community moving forward.
The rising tide of fascism and far-right violence that is currently being aided and abetted by our sitting president.
Yeah,
it's
the
that
Cheeto
old,
in chief.
yeah, it's that old chestnut. May you live in interesting times. Well, these are very interesting times.
Yeah, and I don't want any part of it.
Yeah. Normally, this would be where I'd say go out and vote, but unfortunately, we don't actually live in a democracy. We live in this weird autocracy or not autocracy, oligarchy, where my vote doesn't count as much because I live in California and
Right.
we've got the Electoral College. So basically, be aware of how much good your vote's going to be, and try to use it as best you can. Join mutual aid societies. Work with protesters. Don't be a bootlicker. Don't go to bat for cops. And finally, my last piece of advice is organize a general strike, because I feel like that might be required to try and see anything positive happen.
We may get there. This season's going to get pretty scary before we see anything.
Yeah, it's scary, and I speak authoritatively, because the alternative is to curl up in a corner and cry. So remember, I don't actually know what I'm doing, so take all of my advice with a grain of salt.
Right. So the next, okay, so name a recent event, global, local, or what have you, that either made you, inspired you, or made you smile.
Well, I'm going to have to say the protests, the mass protests over the killing of George Floyd, and then the renewed protests over Breonna Taylor's, the completely freaking inexcusable ruling on the Breonna Taylor thing. Like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Cops broke down the door in plain clothes and shot a sleeping woman in the back, and they got charged for firing bullets into the wall. It's
a wall of the other apartment.
Apartment. Yeah.
There's a meme roaming around, and I put it up there that says, "Sorry, Breonna, that the room next door to you got justice before you." And that's totally true.
Yes, I mean, but whilst these injustices are utterly incensing, and a lot of the conservative reaction on Twitter is just infuriating. You notice how they're all anti-big government, pro-individual liberties, right up until it's a cop shooting a black person.
Right.
So that's infuriating, but the massive protests against them is really heartening, and I think we should all support it as best we can. If you can't get out there, which is, it's fair, I'm nowhere near any of the protests because I live in boring suburbia. You can still donate to bail funds. You can support them on social media. It's like they say, it takes 20 people working in support per rioter on the street or something like that.
Right. And it's interesting too. I think the thing that really kind of makes me smile about it is that when you're watching like the pundits or the newscaster who's on the ground with the whole thing, if you take a second and look beyond them in the background, you see an incredible amount of love and connection between the people that are in these protests, just how in it they are. And I think that's where the hope of humanity is. When you see these people that fervent about wanting the justice, wanting to correct it, and you see the incredible amount of commitment they have, supplying water, so making sure that there are medics nearby, there are all kinds of ways that they're caring for each other. And that, I think, is where the focus should start to be. That's I think the media misses that sometimes. They don't really focus on that. They focus on the drama because it's clickbait and it's newsworthy. But I think one of the things they're missing is the opportunity to actually show that community coming together and by example showing what they mean by Black Lives Matter and the justice for these people.
Yeah.
So okay, excellent. Yep. All right, well, if you could possess a superpower, get on your geek hat. If you could possess a superpower to help heal the world, what would it be?
Well, I'm going to be a big old cheater. I'm going to say Dr. Manhattan's powers, but except for the precognition. Because, see, precognition removes your ability to act. Basically, it removes your free will. So I would just like the Dr. Manhattan powers of basically anything. um, then I think I would start with the forest fires and work my way up. Because I live in California, and the forest fires are bad.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. I hear you.
I'd probably, if I ever got superpowers, I'd probably have to make some kind of like Twitter request account so that I could help. Like, you can tweet to me and say, "Hey, I need you to,
Go out
this,"
and rake the
then
forest.
yeah. See, because if I was Dr. Manhattan, I could clone myself. And
Right, there you go.
There instantaneously.
There you go.
See, it's,
Nice.
I could help everyone. It'd be very nice.
Absolutely.
Okay, so yeah, it'd be forest fires, destroy capitalism. That sort of thing. So.
Absolutely. All right.
Cool.
I'm down with that. Well, you made it through the list.
Yay.
Woohoo!
Woohoo!
Round of applause. No, I gotta stop. So, what's up next for you? What have you got going? Where is the best place for people to find out what you're doing?
All right. So I have my adult works in progress because those are self-published as opposed to being published through publishing house. So they're able to be turned around a lot quicker. They're also a lot schlockier, so they require less editing. So I currently have two projects that I'm working on. The first is the sequel to Pax Multi, Pax Astra, which is about the Prince Lou and Beatrice. Oh, the bug hive mind chose a name, and they chose Beatrice because it's a pun on B.
Nice.
This book is a little silly. It's about their son, their child, who is also a hive mind. So it's a much smaller hive mind that is also a space adventurer in this slightly more space opera-y future. I'm also working on a book called Dream of the Sky, which, to also tie back to the co-author thing, it's set in a universe created by Erica Chappell. Because basically I read her book and I was like, wow, this is really cool. Can I write a book in this universe? And she was like, sure. So I started writing a book in that universe, and I'm now working on that.
Nice.
It's basically a fantasy world in that there's magic and fairies and elves and stuff, but it is a world where human technology reached the 20th century, and they had a World War I sort of war happening with the trenches and the biplanes and stuff, but it dragged on and on and on, and it finally ended when weapons of mass destruction were used to destroy all the cities. And basically all the imperial states fell apart, and now it's just a bunch of scattered villages and communities that are kind of like rebuilding things in a kind of pastoral, cozy apocalypse where it's like the world has ended, but it's all very beautiful out. And so because the war led to people building airplanes in record numbers, there's a whole bunch of biplanes and airplanes, kind of laying around. And so people use them to do mercenary work. So there's, groups of pilots that fly around from town to town doing odd jobs for people. It's called Flying Circus, by the way. So the plot of that book that I wrote, it's called Dream of the Sky, is about a mercenary bomber crew that are also a polyamorous marriage. So, everyone in the bomber crew are married, and they adopt a new member of their family who is a kind of traumatized survivor who was living in a bunker in one of these cities that got destroyed. And this survivor didn't know that the war had ended and was just kind of hiding in the bunker the whole time. So, it's all about her coming out, learning about herself and the world, and going on adventures.
Very cool.
Those are the books I'm working on.
All right. And where should people follow you?
Okay, so I have 2 Twitter accounts. I have one that I never use, and I have one that I use all the time. The one
Well,
that
let's
I
give
never
him the
use-
one that you use all the time.
Well, see, here's the thing. The one that I use all the time is for my adult work, so it's got a lot of adult content on it.
Ah, okay.
So I'm not sure if I want young adults readers to know that it exists.
I hear you.
Yeah. So you can email me at davidcolbyauthor22@gmail.com, and I will respond to any and all fan email that I get. And the other question, am I going to any events? God, no. Have you seen the
Yeah,
outside
I know,
world?
right? Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
but you could be doing virtual events.
Yeah, there are a lot of online readings and stuff.
Yeah, I am doing an online reading, but it is going to be too late for your future listeners because it's happening literally today. I can give you two the link.
So, given that we've talked a lot about a lot of different topics, what do you think should be the title for this episode? Because you said some pretty cool shit.
He has been waiting for this moment all episode.
Let's see, title.
We're now letting our guests decide on the episode title based on what we've talked about. And it can be something you said, it could be something I said, something Van said, just whatever catches your fancy, even topically,
I'm thinking.
I mean, I did write down some things because that's kind of my job.
Oh, sure. What did you write down? Let's see if Dog
All
has
right.
any thought. What did you write down?
Positive feedback is how you stick with writing. More ludicrously, halfway to anywhere, an exponential series of debris. Break it
I
in
like exponential series of debris.
That's a good one.
All right.
Yeah.
Break it in interesting ways. A tiny bit of optimism. Leaping beyond your light cone. And then Martians invaded, or a cozy apocalypse.
I like a cozy apocalypse.
I know,
That's
that
almost-
one's good. That one's really slick.
To be fair, that is actually what we're living through right now because the world's ending, but we're all inside. So
Right,
right. There you go.
Well,
there you go. There's the
if you're
clickbait
lucky,
right there.
you're inside. I should say.
Right.
You want to go with that one?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So,
All right.
Vance, we got our title now. So
Woo-hoo.
we want to thank David Colby for being on the show. Vance, you want to
Thank
do
you.
our normal spiel? And just know, everybody, you are now listening to episode, what is it now?
288.
288.
Wow.
Jeez, we've done quite a
Wow.
few of these. 288, titled A Cozy Apocalypse. So Vance, ride us out.
Written on the Edge, the Rope Podcast is produced jointly by Row Ravens Media and Aquagon Media. For our disclaimers, links to social media, our listen stations, or to sign up as a guest, visit www.ropepodcast.com. David, thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah,
It was
great,
so much
great.
fun.
It's wonderful to have you as our first video interview. So thank you
Yes.
so much for doing this.
And now,
It'll be a really good episode. I'm sure people. It's almost a masterclass in hardcore sci-fi writing.
right? So viewers, go out there, pick up Lunar Cycle, and enjoy the read.
And please give it a review on Amazon.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes, there you go. Shameless plug. Round of applause. All right. Thanks. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
Oh, what's that? Closing time. The bums rush in melody, dear.